Mr. Dixon, why was it necessary to bring state charges?
Why was it necessary? Because multiple thefts occurred, and the bottom line is, do we charge somebody with a crime when a serious crime is committed, or do we not? And my perception is that's our responsibility. And I undertake that. If anybody finds objection to that, I'm glad to talk to them about it.
The wire fraud was not all-encompassing. You needed to file state charges to supplement what was left out of the federal case?
No, I didn't say that. I'm just saying that between January 1, 2010 and April 17, 2012, the window that I had to work with, that these counts alleging theft of government money occurred, and we're prosecuting those.
I guess that's what I'm asking. There was a window there that was not covered under wire fraud from January 2010 until April 16.
I don't know that. I don't know that because I don't know the depth of the wire fraud charge by the federal government, and I am not working in conjunction with them on their case. So whatever that is, that is. I just know that it's my belief that the people of this community have a right to expect that when a serious crime is being committed, that the state's attorney will prosecute.
Can you say how much money is involved in the 60 wire or the 60 transfers that you investigated, and what's going to be the process? Is she going to be taken into custody?
You'll have a copy of that at the end of this, and you can do the math.
Okay. Is she going to be taken into custody anytime soon, or what is the process now for that, of her being actually arrested?
Say it again, Rick.
Is there a process now in fact that she's going to be taken into custody?
She's wanted if the process would take her into custody.
She will be arrested?
Oh, okay, on the custody issue. As I indicated, she was charged by the United States. There's a case, United States versus Rita Crundwell. She is in the custody of the United States Department of Justice. Excuse me, just let me finish.
Okay.
As one of the provisions, to allow a defendant to be released from custody is a bail and bond. Okay? Bail was set for her and she bonded out. Whatever that was, that's their business. She is still a federal custodial position. I do not have the authority to have her arrested, and I won't. I had conversations with the United States Attorney, and I agreed with them. They're telling me what to do, or me telling them what to do. I had conversations with them in which we concurred that it would be inappropriate for me, as a representative of the state system prosecution, to take into custody someone that they've already got in their care, all right? And that's why.
Will nothing be done with the court case here then until the federal case is done?
I don't know when the federal case is going to be done.
What I'm saying is when that is done, then this case will move forward here locally?
Yes, but I'm not saying that this case won't go forward. I'm saying that what I will do, my understanding is that their next court date is October 10th.
Mm-hmm.
And that what I'm going to do is have Ms. Crundwell served with a notice to appear on Sunday immediately after that October 10th date. She will appear here in court, in Lee County Circuit Court, and probably be arraigned, and that our procedure will begin. But she will not be seized and bodily taken to our jail. That's an arrangement that I have with the United States Attorney, and that is based upon my perception of and their perception of existing law covering the subject of dual jurisdiction.
The chances are there's not going to be two trials going on at the same time, though.
Now I've got this hung above.
She's wondering if there are two trials going on at the same
Well,
time.
this case is not going to go to trial at any one time, okay? Each their case and the state case, each go forward on their own agenda.
Can you talk to us about how difficult it was to work around, that lack of information or lack of access, I guess, to federal information?
Sure. I wouldn't say it was an impossible thing. I would simply say that it was our job to conduct an investigation the way we perceive investigations ought to be done. They didn't hold our hand, they didn't lead us to information. I only received one document of a page and 8 other lines, which is a summary from them, but I read in local media where accounts were held. I also knew that there had to be some paper trail here in City Hall. And so we issued subpoenas. It took a while to define what we needed. It took a while to have the responsive organizations respond with the information. And from then, it took quite a while for Lieutenant Morgan to collect, gather, collate, and analyze.
So from start to finish, how long did the whole investigation take?
Wasn't it early July that we had our meeting? Okay. So that's early July, and this is September 20th, so it all happened in that area.
And then from today on, where do we go from here as far as in the future?
In any criminal case where a defendant is indicted, the defendant is either arrested with an arrest warrant issues, which is not the case here, or the defendant is provided with a notice to appear. And a notice to appear is not at all unusual. And that provides the defendant notice that they will appear before a certain judge in a certain courtroom on a day certain to answer the charges. At that time, the defendant, any defendant in a felony case, is instructed as to what their rights are, what they're charged with, what if any bond is to be set, a determination of whether that person is going to have their own attorney, or whether they're indigent, and in which case, if it applies, the court would appoint the public defender to represent. From that point on, the case develops just like any other criminal case that you cover.
Who prompted that July meeting? Where did the information come from that you guys thought you had to meet and move forward with this?
Who did what?
Where did the information come from?
He's behind this guy right here.
Who prompted that July meeting, and where did that information come from that you felt compelled to move forward with the state?
Where did the information come from to move forward with this?
That's what I don't understand. I'm sorry, I don't want to go to you, but I don't understand your question.
Before you met for July to take this information to a grand jury, who decided that this is what we want to do as a city and a county?
All right, I can only answer my participation in the facts that I know. It was drawn to my attention at the meeting that I described and that Mayor Burke, I believe, described. And based on that, I felt that it was the appropriate course of action was to conduct an investigation. Our responsibility is to conduct a separate independent investigation to ascertain whether or not there's a probable cause to believe that these crimes have been committed. That's how it starts.
Is there somebody here, though, that brought that to you, that can speak about why they chose to bring that information to you?
Well, I thought we raised that very simply, that they had a meeting, called us to a meeting, and we disclosed to us the perception that the crime had occurred, and we undertook that investigation.
So was there the feeling here in the law enforcement community that a single wire fraud charge on a federal level was insufficient to meet the nature of the crime?
Yeah, I can answer that. Do you want to answer?
Yeah.
All right, he'll answer it, and then I'll answer it.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I can tell you that around this community, there has been a lot of concern, rightly or wrongly, that the accused was going to get off with a slap on the wrist. And the basis for it, from everything I understand, I'm not saying that there is a basis for it, but I think the public perceived that the public has interpreted that that probably the next step is going to be a slap on the wrist. And I think this is in a way that we were pushing this was to get some insurance that if there was a slap on the wrist that there would be more from this angle. And I can tell you at least that's where my interest is lying on this.
I don't disagree with Mayor Burke that that was his perception of the feeling within the community. You're asking that question to me, and I say, and I thought I made it clear, but I'll say it again. Part of my job, not me as a person, part of the job of the state's attorney, is to prosecute crimes when they arise and when there's a reasonable basis to conduct an investigation. And that's exactly what I did. And that investigation was best conducted by the grand jury subpoena process, and then to have the independent analysis, as I described previously, by a law enforcement agency that was not connected to the city of Dixon. And that's exactly where we're at.
Mayor, might I ask, the whole issue of restitution from the assets that are now being auctioned off, so does the city of Dixon have any reasonable expectation that you can get some of that money back before this case is adjudicated?
Before what?
Before the case is finalized. If she goes to trial on the federal level, do you have to wait until there's a conviction or an acquittal?
As I understand it, we do not get any restitution until it's a done deal, convicted, or whatever. That's what I understand. There's no, I think, there was some money that was acquired from a bank account, which the Fed still had. As I understand, we're not getting anything out of it until it's all closed out.
That's what they have told you, or have you asked them whether?
That's what I understand from the federal people.
Gentlemen, did your investigation lead you to any other suspects? I mean, is there a belief based on what you've looked at that anybody else is involved in this?
No,
How come you only went back 2 years?
I would say this. The United States Attorney's Office has concluded after their investigation that nobody else was involved in this enterprise. Totally independent of that, and based upon my work with Lieutenant Morgan and a review of the records, I concur with that, but I'm not just being a yes man. I would also say to you that it has been my experience in the few years that I've practiced law that if you have more than one person involved, you're in deep trouble. And in my view, had there been even one other person involved with Ms. Crundwell in this enterprise, it would have been exposed some time ago. I hope that answers your question.
Thank you.
How come you only went back 2 years? How come you only went back to investigate for 2 years and longer?
Because in order to prosecute, I have to comply with the understanding given to me by the U.S. Attorney's Office. And they authorized me to proceed on all thefts that occurred after January 1, 2010. And I would add one thing to that. Folks ought to be pretty satisfied with 60 counts. If these counts were run concurrently, and if this defendant were convicted of all 60 counts and there's a minimum of 6 years in prison, you can multiply 6 times 60 pretty easily. And there's such a thing as a pound of flesh, and there's such a thing as a ton of flesh. Thank you.
Will you be getting any help from the Illinois Attorney General's office when this actually gets prosecuted and goes to trial?
No, I did not. I requested assistance from the Illinois Attorney General's office at the outset, and they did not have the manpower or womanpower to work with me on it, so they opted out.
Mr. Dixon, is there any danger of any kind of double jeopardy if she was found not guilty at the federal level, but then is facing charges here?
I wouldn't really choose the word danger. Judges protect everybody's rights, and so the judges will do the right thing there. I believe you will probably find that as to that issue, it may have some connection to the start date of January 1, 2010. Because I think you're wondering, as this lady here is, well, what about all of those acts that went all the way back to 1990? I think our focus on the counts contained in the indictment is very accurate.
So the outcome on the federal level shouldn't affect your case at all in any way, or vice versa,
No, ma'am.
if you finish first.
Mr. Dixon, you also seek restitution.
I don't know yet, but I hope you know that I don't look like an absolute fool. There's nothing left, in my view. I think, as I understand it, the feds have taken everything of Rita Crundwell's that has any value whatsoever and left her with some clothing and a bunch of trophies. That's my understanding. To me, restitution is not the focus of the state prosecution.
But it is the focus of the city. So, Mayor, what is your reasonable expectation of getting any amount of money back from both of these cases? For one of you?
Well, I haven't talked to anyone that really had a good, accurate estimate, for example, of the sale of the horses. I know that the auctioneers are now saying that they may expect to see $5 million in the sale of these horses, but I think it's kind of an open question as to where it's going to land. But I think we're confident when this thing is all put to bed that there will be a substantial restitution to the city. But I can't, it's pretty hard to put a number on it.
Did your investigation include looking at where the money went? I mean, we know about the horses and we know about the motorhome and the properties. Were there any discoveries we don't know about yet? Did she own a casino?
For our investigation, we've made inquiry by virtue of subpoenas. We haven't called the subpoenas back, returned back the information, but a certain amount of it. At this point, pursuant to Rule of Professional Conduct 3.8, I can't go into the details of the facts of what's been done with what or where it went, because at this point, this is a defendant who has been charged with an offense, and at this point is presumed innocent with all of the power and responsibility of the United States government and the state of Illinois government, innocent until otherwise proven. And therefore, these are allegations. Based on that, I'm limited as to what I can say about the facts bearing on our investigation that involve evidence that could be introduced into the case. I'm not going to go beyond that, but I think it can be said we've done a lot of background work and still have more background work on where some of that money is going.
Mr. Dixon, I understand that you said that this case will proceed like any other case, but because of the nature of the case, is it kind of hard for everybody to keep their personal feelings about this outside? Do you understand what I'm saying?
You may get cranked up with personal feelings. I really don't have any personal feelings about this case. I hardly know Ms. Crundwell, and until I started seeing her picture in the paper, even though she worked with us, I'd come in to pay my water bill and that sort of thing. I never really had any contact with her, and I have no personal likes or dislikes. got a job to do, I got an oath that I've got to complete.
But as far as, you know, if this case goes to trial and picking a jury for this, do you see if that's going to be difficult at all with, I guess, picking from a pool of Dixon residents or Lee County
We
residents?
haven't had much problem with picking juries over the years. You'd be amazed the number of people that live in Lee County that don't know much at all about this case. That's just the way of life. And some people who know something about it may know something about it, but they haven't formulated any opinions or prejudices that would affect their ability to be a fair and impartial juror. We see that all the time. I mean, this is small. Some of y'all are from larger communities. In a community this small, it would be the exception to the rule if we have a panel of 40 jurors and at least 4 or 5 or 6 that say, sure, I know Attorney Dixon, or sure, I know Attorney Whitcomb, or sure, I know Judge Jacobson, or whatever. Because they do, it's their community. That should not affect one's ability either to prosecute or to get a fair jury for fair trial.
If Rita is found guilty, not guilty at the federal level, and since they're holding on to her assets, but she is later found guilty at the state level, would her assets and the sale of her assets, would that money still come back to Dixon, being that they were in federal control? How would that work?
I'm sure.
Okay.
This question is for law enforcement. Chief Langloss, with Sterling having to step in, do you agree with Mr. Dixon as far as, conspiracy theories, leaving yourself open to that? Did you agree with, what he said?
I fully agree with the decision that was made. It's something we discussed at length. As law enforcement, it's our job to represent the community fair and impartially, to be objective. And while we would love to take on this investigation and do a great job like Sterling has, there can't be any appearance of impropriety. We can't leave anything open for question. And in my opinion, there was no better person to lead this investigation, Lieutenant Morgan. He's done a fantastic job.
Has this set of circumstances ever happened before where you had to have handed over to Sterling or someone else?
We've worked together for 10 years. Several years ago, as a detective sergeant, I worked the case for them. And so it's just a great relationship. We work on a lot of things together, from drugs to major cases. A few years ago, we had the African homicide. And because of this agreement, within 30 minutes, I had 15 other police officers on scene from many different jurisdictions. It's a great agreement. Law enforcement has to work together, and that's what we've done here. And that's why this is becoming a major success.
Okay, there's nothing any further. Thank you very much.